Welcome to RSA 2026. My name is Scott Stamen. I'm Director of Product Marketing at Akamai. And today I'm super excited to talk to Yuriv Shivek, our Senior Director of API Security. Welcome, Yuriv. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, Yuriv. I noticed a big smile on your face, obviously, because API security topic is resurging. Kind of went a little bit down and now it's back up. What is happening? Tell me what's going on.
Well, API security sadly can never, sadly for, everybody out there who's like, oh my God, I have so many APIs. It just won't go away, right? There are a lot of APIs. Organizations have gone through digital transformation. And they were like, we got that out of our system. But no, because now we're, in the throes of the AI revolution, and suddenly you have to expose a lot of those APIs through various protocols such as MCP to AI agents in order to remain relevant and really embrace the new AI revolution, which you could say at that level would be like automation 2.0 for a lot of those companies. So that is like table stakes now. So definitely.
So would you say that it's the scale that's changing? Like what is happening?
Ooh, I think it's across like 4 different dimensions. So first of all, you see more APIs, right? You find that, maybe my management APIs and all the APIs I've written, they're not exactly tailored for the agentic use cases of today. So I need to add some more. Secondly, of course, there is more usage, right? So suddenly on top of your existing clients, you have agents and assistants that are using your existing APIs and those new ones that you're adding just for them. Then there's the complexity of it all. Identity, right? If that was an issue before with authentication and authorization, authorization being the biggest cause for API breaches, right? If you look at the OWASP top 10, that's like 5
authorization,
out of 10.
authorization.
Yeah, exactly. So different authorization bypasses. So now authorization has just become so much more complex, right? You need to know that this agent is calling on behalf of Stas, but Stas is now giving it permissions to do something, and in a minute, Stas is going to give it different permissions to do something else to that same resource, right? And so the change in scope is just so frequent, and it's just an order of magnitude more complex to track. And then last, and maybe least, from a CISO's point of view, but still very, important to track is, okay, I have all of these flows of events happening, all these chains of calls from an API to an API to an API. And you want to know if one of them is going to the outside, to some outside APIs. That was also true prior to the AI revolution, but it's doubly important today, because if you go outside to some external model and that model has been compromised or polluted by, people poisoning it with some bad data, that goes in and it taints your entire call chain all the way back. So 4 different dimensions of new complexity, basically.
Right. So actually what's interesting to me is the fact that unknown or like zombie APIs is a big deal, right? And always big deal. But is that also sort of compounding in the era of AI?
I think you can use the same terminology today. I mean, customers come to us and they say, okay, first of all, I'm concerned, do I have shadow MCP servers out there? It's like, is there some developer somewhere who's spinning up MCP servers and exposing capabilities to AI agents that I don't know of, right? So that is one concern. Then another big concern is, do I have shadow or, unsanctioned agents that are talking to those various capabilities, to those tools, resources that are exposed by MCP? So you can definitely have, it's sort of the same mental model, but it's just, different naming and different technologies.
So in your opinion, should we treat MCP servers, which are essentially API endpoints, should we treat them as just other APIs and apply sort of the same rigor across the board?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
They're definitely APIs, and we should definitely catalog them and add them to our inventory and put them into all of the governance processes that we have for APIs. Of special importance is, of course, going into the tool level, because that single MCP server API endpoint actually exposes many tools and resources, and each of them may expose different types of sensitive data and stuff like that. So you do want to have that visibility and that resolution. And then, of course, you need to track, okay, who's consuming all of that? Are these sanctioned or unsanctioned agents?
Right. Got it. Now, what I'm hearing so far is really we're focusing on sort of the traffic aspect of what's happening. But I know, and you know, that APIs don't live just in traffic, or some of them just don't generate traffic yet. So can you talk to me a little bit about sort of like APIs that are residing in code, how important it is, or what's the danger there, why we need visibility into those APIs in development?
Okay, so from a security program point of view, our customers are always, first of all, concerned about visibility. Do I actually know, for auditing purposes, all of the APIs that I have out there? And I may have 3 different business units and they're spread out around the globe, and each is using a different technology stack. And so it's not a trivial question, right? And so you start piecing things together, and really what you need is you need to go and touch all of the API data sources that you can, right? And there's basically 5 types, if you think about it. So there's the, let's look at them chronologically, say. So if you're a well-trained developer, you may start with writing a specification, right? Okay. And then once you have a specification, maybe you go and you implement, so you write source code based on that specification. And then you might automate the deployment using infrastructure as code.
Yep.
And then there's the infrastructure itself through which the traffic flows, or that hosts the API. So that could be your API gateway or something like that. And then there's the actual traffic,
of course,
right? Yeah. So if you really want to have full coverage, then you have to touch all 5 types of data sources. But even if you just touch 2 or 3 of them and you start correlating, you already get a much clearer picture of what's going on. So back to your original question about source code.
Yeah.
Source code is super important because, hey, maybe you don't see some APIs just because you are not looking at that traffic, because you don't know where that is. But if you go and you look at all your source code and you realize, oh my God, there's a project there that I don't see the traffic for, and it looks super scary, then you have to pull on that thread, right? And maybe it's something that someone wrote and never deployed, but maybe it is actually deployed and you're just not seeing the traffic. So you need to ensure that you're monitoring that.
And if you do end up seeing the traffic, that mapping is incredibly helpful too, right?
Of course. So if you do see the mapping, and if you do have, like I mentioned, if you can pin, like stick pins in like 2 or 3 different places for the same API. So what we do is we correlate, and then suddenly you have the source code information inside of the traffic API inventory. And that, of course, flows into all of the posture events or security events that are triggered. So you can easily go to Joe and tell him, hey, Joe, in line 113 in users.py, you have Ebola vulnerability, and we saw that in traffic, and we know it's you because it's linked to the code.
And that's the holy grail. It's the fact that security is no longer throwing things over the fence and going, you developers figure out. You can go to the developer and say, be very specific about what was wrong, why it's wrong, and what you can do to, what you need to do to fix it.
Exactly.
And so staying on that topic just for a second, I feel like some of the breaches actually originate in the development. So the testing becomes now sort of a very, well, I mean, it's always been, but it's very important, I feel like, to also test your APIs before they make it into production.
Yes, it has always been important. And it's funny because speaking to some, we just had a customer advisory board with some of our largest customers. And even speaking to them, it's evident that some of them were like shocked to realize internally that some of their teams are not testing their APIs, sometimes not even functionally, let alone from a security perspective. So there is that term that Gartner no longer uses, that shift left, right? But I think nowadays, moving some of the onus back to the developers makes so much more sense. It's so much easier with the advent of all of the AI coding assistants. they should really do that. And it's super trivial to do if you just have an assistant help you, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, Claude, test my API for vulnerabilities with active testing, enter. And that can happen with our active testing.
Active testing being, to those that don't know, active testing being our API testing solution.
That is.
But one thing that's also, I think, interesting to me is a little bit of a like alert fatigue that happens when it comes to APIs, right? So API security in generally is pretty noisy. So how do we move from that noise to signal and really focus on what's important versus thousands of vulnerabilities or alerts about things?
Yeah. So this is a constant struggle, I think, for everybody in the industry and for us as well. The way we tackle this is by getting a lot of signals from those various different sources. And we're lucky to also be part of the greater Akamai ecosystem, the greater Akamai platform. There's a lot of threat intelligence information and other signals from other Akamai platform components that we can leverage and then basically go and reduce the false positives and really give you the interesting things.
It's actionable, I feel like,
yes.
Right? That's the important part. So if you obviously you're talking to a lot of customers, a lot of CISOs at these events, is there something that, kind of top of your mind, like what they should do in this era of AI when it comes specifically to API security?
So I would say, first and foremost, visibility. I mean, you have to have visibility. It remains the holy grail because you can't secure what you don't see. And typically I would prioritize, and everybody would prioritize, I think, would agree with me, the things that are internet facing, public facing, right? You want to secure a perimeter first. Now, I mentioned previously that it's not so trivial because you might get poisoned under certain conditions, but you at least need to know that you're not exposing things that should not be exposed out there. Then there's the question of how do I actually embed all of that into a security program? And I find that a lot of times it's really not a technology and tooling issue as much as it is a processes and
culture.
People
and culture.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes there's politics involved and stuff like that. And people just yesterday someone was asking me, well, IT does not want to deploy this API gateway, and like we have to have this API gateway. So I don't. Well, if you're the business and IT doesn't want to own it, you should own it because it will completely benefit you, right? So there's sometimes these little skirmishes that are happening within the organization that I think CISOs should try and CIOs should try to sort of make the right decisions.
As a figure of authority, they need to lay down the law.
Help people work together. Definitely.
And sort of as one of the kind of a closing or parting thought, what do you think sort of the security leaders need to prepare for as this innovation happens? Is there something top of your mind where you're like, ooh?
So a lot of our customers have started mentioning, it's not a lot yet, but it's definitely a trend. They started mentioning agentic SOC as sort of some sort of a buzzword. But really, if you boil it down, people should think about automating, right? And that is what's at the crux of this. And automating your responses, automating your playbooks, making sure that everything is automated, and preferably, if you can, shift that, again, left, sorry for using that term, makes perfect sense. You can put a lot of guardrails very early on and ensure that codes get written properly, designed properly, with the right frameworks in place. Otherwise, it won't go through some gate, right? And if you can do that, if you can manage that procedurally or programmatically, then I think you'll be in a good place.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Yariv. This was incredibly helpful and insightful. So if you'd like to learn more about API security and what Akamai is doing, please visit akamai.com, and we'll see you in the next video.